semester as we figure out our discipleship ministry in the church God's called you to serve. I pray your mentoring times weekly with your mentor have been incredible. So far this semester, you've unpacked your spiritual formation and your personal practices, knowing that there are no absolutes of what time of day or how you do it or how you integrate that with your ministry work that you are fulfilling at your local church. All that comes together. We've also talked about small group ministry and what type of group life. But you remember, between spiritual disciplines and group life, we talked about mentoring relationships and how do you mentor those and how do you stay in a mentoring relationship yourself. Those are just some of the topics you've unpacked with your mentor over several weeks. This week, though, we kind of shift gears and talk about equipping leadership in the church. Equipping leadership is a fun thing that just gets me energized, that I'm helping someone use their spiritual gifts in the body of the local church. I'm actually helping someone lead in their sweet spot, if you will. However, I can train somebody to be an effective Bible teacher or an upward coach or work in children's ministry or youth ministry or be an usher or a greeter on Sunday morning, or actually be very incredible at running the screens on Sunday, putting words up so people can worship and actually sing the words of what we're doing in worship every week. But does that mean you're making disciples among those leaders? That's a debate or a conversation we're currently having in many arenas, and we're going to have it today just for a few minutes that we hope you have with your mentor. And so I'm just going to pose this question, colleagues, as we begin. Is there a discipleship component that should guide how we equip leaders to serve in the church? Or do we just equip them to fulfill the role we've recruited them to serve?
Well, you want them to be like Jesus Christ.
And that's right.
That's the goal.
So, Dr. Stewart, you're saying that should guide everything we're doing.
It should.
Not the job description we created for that volunteer.
You know, I had a...
Do it to excellence.
Do it.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with a group of children's ministry teachers, some of whom had been teaching children for longer than I had been alive. I mean, truly, seasoned teachers. And so we came together for a training session that I was to do with them. And before we started, I said, but before we start, let's just I put a sheet of paper on the wall and said, let's write we need to pray for each other, for you, and for the children that you teach, and what might we put on the board, because I mean, I don't know all of these things. And now these were ladies that I worked with as well. This was a church where I attended as well. And so they started to put things on the board, and they were serious things, and there were things among them that were quite serious. And so actually for about 45 minutes, what we did was pray together, and there were tears shed, and hearts were shared. And at the end of that time, we did do some skill development as well, but at the end of it, this woman said, in all the years I've been teaching, this was the greatest time I've ever had with with the people that I teach with. And this has been the best. This has been the best time. And what that said to me was, it's because they'd come together not to learn just a skill, but they had come together spiritually. And if we're really going to equip them to do that kind of thing in their own life and with others, then we have to have those kinds of experiences together. So part of, I think, my responsibility as a ministry leader is to equip them spiritually, to help them grow as individual Christians, not just as a teacher with a skill, but as human beings who are called by Christ and who are his own. And they are faithful followers of Christ, and it's my responsibility because they're under my wing.
Right. Well, one of the problems is that most situations our leaders are giving up their own Bible study times for their age group in order to serve in our ministries and our churches. Right. And so I think in my experience, one of the best things that we did is we started a small group, a Bible study, discipling class for our leaders.
Yeah,
and so
that's
it met
great.
at a different time. It wasn't during our Sunday morning Bible study hour.
Couldn't be.
Couldn't be, because they were serving, right? So it was a challenge to find a time when we could all meet, and so scheduling was an issue, but we settled on a certain date and time. And I tell you, that was really one of the most fulfilling experiences in ministry. So it wasn't so much about skill development or talking about the scheduling or events or what's going on in our specific age group ministry, but it was about life on life, truly discipling, studying scripture, praying together, and I think that what the result is that they become better leaders because they're being poured into. There's a fellowship that takes place.
I had a great understanding a number of years ago studying through Ephesians 4, and as I was reading the scripture, it says that the church has been given gifts of leaders, certain functions, to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And it says the result of that is unity, knowledge, and spiritual maturity, spiritual growth. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm after as an educator. I used to think if people knew right, they would do right.
Right.
And that's not necessarily there's a lot of people that are in pursuit of knowledge and knowing, and they're never get to do the work. And so these two things have to be partnered together. And so I began to really see, if I can help people discover who their identity is, their calling, their giftedness, put them in the right place where they flourish, they're going to grow spiritually because they're having to depend on Christ to do that. That builds faith in them. It builds them up. And as everybody in the church does that, it builds unity toward the overall mission. And then what we do is we make sure that the places we put them are tied to the mission of the church and the particular ministries that the leadership determines as most effective fulfilling the gospel in that community.
Yeah, that process you're talking about in Ephesians chapter 4 is really it's a mentoring, discipling process that results in ministry happening, and then maturity is next.
That's right.
So that's like opposite of what how we try to do it sometimes. We try to say, okay, you got to be spiritually mature first, and then you're going to go into ministry. But that text is really clear biblically about the direction.
Get people
So we can
moving
be
right.
equipping and discipling as we're going.
That's right.
Those are really working together.
Yes.
In fact, I think you can't really fulfill your discipleship part unless you're serving in some meaningful way in your giftedness.
I hope as you meet with your mentor this week that you talk through, as you equip the people in your church to serve in the various roles that you've identified you need people serving, whether paid or volunteer, that you figure out a way to where you are equipping them and discipling them, and not just equipping them to fulfill a role that you think needs to be filled, but you're actually helping them mature in their relationship with Christ as they serve in the local church, and they're equipped to do that service. They're equipped to do that role. So they're actually being discipled and they're being equipped, and those are working together. I know for me, I hate to admit it, but many times I just trained people to do the function because we needed the function done, and I thought I'd done a great job. But the reality was I'd not been checking, are you maturing in your relationship with Christ? Or is there a metric to where this is who you are as a believer as well as who you're telling other people how they need to be? And those work so well together when we're equipping and discipling in tandem and watching God do some incredible things through the local church. We hope that you will unpack that with your mentor this week, that y'all will walk through that and evaluate your ministry setting. Are we equipping for equipping's sake to fill positions? Are we equipping so that people are being discipled that make disciples?